Our next grammar unit is on adjectives and adverbs, so please watch the following video and take notes, which I will check in class on Tuesday. Complete the activities that are embedded within the notes and write down any questions that you have. Please feel free to pause and rewind as needed. So to begin, an adjective is a word that modifies or describes a noun or a pronoun. So anything that describes a noun or a pronoun is an adjective. And the most common adjectives are articles. So those small little words that you see, a, an, and the, those are all considered to be adjectives, but they're also considered to be articles. They're a specific type. All of the other adjectives answer particular questions. So the questions below, what kind, which one, how many, or how much, are the four main questions which adjectives answer. So what kind describes what kind of riders? So for example, there can be fast riders. What kind of stadium? There could be a crowded stadium. What kind of day? A steamy day. Now which one deals with separating one thing from something else? So which lap? The first lap. Which lane? The inner lane. Which race? The final race. How many or how much, typically deals with a number or an amount. So to tell how many teams, how many fans, or how much applause there is at, a game, for example. So what I would like you to do is pause the video, copy these two sentences, and underline the adjectives, and we'll go back and look at this on Tuesday. Now, beyond basic adjectives, you need to know that adjectives are used in writing to create imagery. So it's not just knowing what adjectives are, but it's understanding how they're used in the writing that you create and the writing that we read in class. So again, I need you to pause the video. I want you to copy this short little paragraph and go through and add adjectives to make the paragraph include more imagery, to make it have more life. Now, beyond those types, there are other adjectives that don't always look as if they are adjectives. So you need to pay attention when you're pulling them out of sentences. So, for example, a computer could be a noun, okay? But if it's a computer keyboard, computer is describing keyboard, so it's being used as an adjective. Again, the internet could be a noun, or school could be a noun, but in these two examples right here, they're each being used to describe a noun after it. I want you to come up with two examples on your own that are similar, where you have words that could be nouns, but if they're used a particular way, they could also be used as adjectives. Please pause and do that now. Another thing you need to consider is that a proper noun can also be changed into a proper adjective, just how we looked before, where you could have a noun that's used to describe something. A proper noun can be done to do the same thing. So if we're talking about Shakespeare's works, they could also be Shakespearean works. If we take Asia and we're talking about food from Asia, it could be Asian food. If we're talking about the language of Spain is the Spanish language. So I want you to think up a proper noun and change it into a proper adjective as well. Now, typically we know that adjectives come right before the noun or the pronoun, which they modify. However, when you have a linking verb, and you have to think back to the linking verb song so that you can remember all of those different linking verbs, the adjective can come after the linking verb, and these are called predicate adjectives, and they follow linking verbs and they're describing the subject before the linking verb. So, in the sky is blue, is our linking verb, and blue is our predicate adjective, and it is describing sky. And I appear tired. Appear is a linking verb. Tired is our predicate adjective. And tired is describing I. Now, something else that can be transformed, just as proper nouns can be transformed and common nouns can be transformed, demonstrative pronouns can also be transformed into adjectives. So, for example, the demonstrative pronouns are this, that, these, and those. And in the example, this book is the best, this is telling us which one, which book. A non-example, this is the best, this is being used as a pronoun because it's taking place of the noun. So you always need to read the entire sentence and consider what role the noun is playing, or the pronoun's playing, or the adjective is playing within the sentence. You need to look at the entire context in order to ensure that you get the question correct. So, now that we've reviewed adjectives, please pause the video, copy these 4 sentences, and underline the adjectives within these sentences. Moving on. Adverbs are also modifiers. Okay, they also describe words, but adverbs describe verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. They are not used to describe nouns. So that is the difference between an adjective and an adverb. An adjective describes a noun or a pronoun. An adverb describes a verb, an adjective, or another adverb. And just as we had 4 questions for adjectives that let us know that certain words are adjectives, we also have 4 questions that let us know that certain words are adverbs. Those questions are how, when, where, and to what extent. Now, you've probably been taught when you were little that adverbs typically end in ly. And to a degree they do, but not every adverb ends in ly. So you need to know these different questions and have some different examples in order to be able to figure out which words in sentences are adverbs. Now, an adverb that modifies an adjective or other adverb is typically right before the word that it modifies. But an adverb that modifies a verb or describes a verb can be placed in 3 different places. If we look at the sentence below, the rocket ascended suddenly. In this sentence, the is our adjective. Okay, it's one of those articles. Rocket is our subject. Ascended is our action verb. And suddenly is our adverb describing how the rocket ascended. So suddenly can come after the verb, it can come before the verb, and it can also come at the beginning of the sentence. And what I want you to make sure that you understand is that if you put an adverb at the beginning of a sentence, you also need to remember to put a comma after it. It's used as an introductory word or phrase when you have an adverb clause, an adverb phrase, or an adverb by itself. You need to put a comma right after it if it's at the beginning of a sentence. Now, intensifiers are a special type of adverb. And these are the ones that typically modify adverbs or other adjectives. So, we were talking before that you'll typically find this right before the word that's being described. And the main intensifiers are almost, especially, extremely, nearly, quite, really, so, to, usually, and very. And these words answer that to what extent question. So, just as we've done before, please pause the video now, copy these sentences, and I want you to underline the adverbs in each of the following sentences. Now, we've talked about the difference between adjectives and adverbs, but let's talk about some similarities. One is that there are 2 different forms. There's comparative forms and there's superlative forms. You use a comparative form to compare 2 things. And when you have a comparative, it typically ends in ER. So, the Titanic was larger than the Olympic. The Titanic is being compared only to the Olympic. It traveled faster than the other ship. It is singular, ship is singular, so you're comparing two things. The superlative form is when you're comparing one thing to more than one other thing. So, sometimes it's a group, sometimes it's just three. But you have to do that count in your head to figure out if you need to use the comparative ER or the superlative EST. So in a similar sentence as the one we just looked at, you have, in fact, the Titanic was the largest ship of all. It's comparing the Titanic to all ships. So we're going to add EST to our adjective. Of the fleet ships, the Titanic raced the fastest. Here, again, you're comparing the Titanic to all of the fleet's ships. Now, sometimes things get a little tricky. So if we start with the simple part, any one-syllable words you add ER or EST to in order to create the comparative or superlative form. However, when you get into two-syllable adjectives and adverbs, some of them will have more or most that come before them. More is our comparative term, most is our superlative term. This is also true for words that are three or more syllables. If they're three or more syllables, you are always going to use more or most to create the comparative or the superlative form. Finally, you need to remember that there are some irregular adverbs and adjectives. And we use these in speech a lot, and a lot of times people make some mistakes with them. So I would make sure that you copy down all of these examples, and we'll be looking at some additional examples in class. But particularly the difference between well and better and much and more, make sure that you look at those and really copy down each of these different examples so we can go through them in class. I will see you on Tuesday.